Okay guys, one more great talk before we go to lunch. I would like to present Steffen Konrath. Steffen came here from Switzerland, especially for you today, guys. So let's hear it for him. Thank you.
I think it's amazing looking at all the conferences out there which cost so much money, but this one is for free. I think I like that a lot. And looking at you guys, I think it's great to have that community here. And I'm really looking forward to those kind of exchanges. The topic of me today is about media and journalism for one reason. I've been working for Süddeutscher Verlag for some time, so building products and services. And I thought it would be just reasonable to look at some kind of applied AI examples, use cases, which hopefully inspire you to build something similar or something better. Just coming back to the presentation before, I'm spokesperson of the German AI Society for ethics and AI experts. And one thing I learned over the years now is that we have to ask the ethical question always if you build products and services, which is quite interesting if you just start to think about what kind of impact the work you're actually doing. So for me, giving the presentation today, it's really about those things, inspiration, opportunities. I would like to give you some insights what's happening in media, and hopefully you get some inspirations building cool stuff. So yeah, we have actually many content formats in media. So we have text, we have images, we have video, and the way how we collaborate. And I will show you some examples of what's really out there in the market, giving you some insights how big players are doing. The first one here was actually built by the New York Times. And the problem they faced is, remember that's a website where huge traffic comes in. A lot of people are trying to comment on the articles. You actually can't handle that. It's in the thousands of comments. How many people do you have to employ to just work with the kind of comments? So we have a team of roughly 14 moderators here, 14 moderators, and they said only 10% of the articles on the New York Times have been open for comments, which means a lot of opportunities interacting with the readers just was lost. On the other hand, it's just crazy what kind of comments you get if you have a comment section on a website. I just typed in an example. So we actually built a project which was called Perspective AI, working together with Google to find a method, a methodology to deal with toxicity in comments. So instead of overwhelming the pure guys working in the newsroom, having to read all that stuff, we just thought, can we do that with a machine supported? So we built a machine which actually predicted the toxicity of comments, helping them to find a ranking. So only the poor comments were just ranked higher. So moderators actually knew what kind of comments have to do manually worked on, and the rest was just passed through faster. That's one of the examples where we can see that a media organization like the New York Times can use natural language processing in that case to be faster and to be more working with the readers. The second example I liked also very much. I start with animation. When I was working in the newsroom, sometimes when you work as a journalist, you need to get more additional data with the text you're working on. Sometimes you like to get information about people and persons, organizations, looking up in the archives if there's more information. So this is an example from the New York Times. We have a lab there, which deals with actual daily problems and try to build products of the future and to adapt future aspects into the daily work. And we built a product which is also just scanning your live input when you're typing something as an article. And it finds the entities in the text and links that to other areas where we have more information about it. I like it very much. It helps to be very structured in what you're doing. For me, it was an interesting learning because last year when I worked with Mitteldeutscher Rundfunk, MDR in Germany, ahead of the German election, we tried to use natural language processing as well to understand what kind of differences are in what kind of media is reporting and what are people really discussing ahead of the election. And it's interesting to see and to understand if there's a gap in reporting and gap in what people actually want to hear. That sounds strange. Okay, so that's one of the examples where you can actually use natural language processing in the daily work. This is a very simple one. This is a Japanese newspaper. We use natural language processing for summarizing text, which usually costs a lot of time. We heard the question about loss of jobs before. In this case, I would say that's not loss of jobs. In this case, it's more like a journalist could focus more on the more important work. You can focus more on building or writing cool articles, creating great content, instead of wasting time summarizing content. Of course, AI can cause a lot of trouble in the heads of journalists. Sorry, it's getting dry here. You've heard of robot journalism, which means journalists are a little bit afraid of machines taking over the work. And this is a beautiful example from the text of Hemingway. It's a beautiful example to see and understand how translation actually works. So in this case, we did a test. They used an English text from Hemingway, used a machine to translate it in Japanese, and used the machine to translate it from Japanese back into English. Now, just check the text. What kind of text do you think was written by Hemingway? Just a guess. Yeah?
Number one.
Number one? Okay. Who's for number one? Okay. Who's for number two? Okay. Do you think I should give a solution?
Yeah.
Okay. So number two was a machine. The interesting thing is that the translation is already as good, but we think we can mimic sometimes the author of highly well-written pieces. There's some hints there. Maybe like leopard was seeking at that altitude, leopard wanted at that altitude. So sometimes you get a hint by the words, just the word selection. But I think what you actually get here is an understanding of we are approaching that. We're coming near to a point that we can actually mimic an author. So far, if you think about robot journalism, it's more like having sports articles, so highly structured text, financial articles written by machines, not what kind of essays or what kind of story formats Hemingway stands for. For me, it's interesting to see how that can be used. You know that the large news agency use robot journalism for most of the work if it comes to highly standardized text. As I said, the financial formats and the sports formats. We can actually increase the output of increasing stories because it's just not 100 people, journalists writing the stories, it's just 1,000 articles by machine. So it's much more output for them. This is an interesting insight into the future where we're heading. Of course, the journalists discuss the impact of machines on how we get our opinion as well. This is an example which I found on the web, talking about different search results during the American-US election, presidential election in 2016. You see two examples of searches for Obama and Mike Romney. You might know both were somehow competing during the election. And the interesting thing is that Obama searches usually led to search results where Obama was second story as well. So in case of Mike Romney, it was just like a stop. There was not a story of Mike Romney in the second level of the results set. So is that kind of search engine output biased? Are we led into some kind of opinion bias that way? This is an ethical question. How do we design those kind of algorithms? It's something we need to discuss if we work in that area. So this is, I think, a cool example to understand what machines can actually achieve. Another one is you can I think I will open the presentation later, you get the links as well. This one is interesting as well. So we used special expressions in searches in Google again for blackmail, which came up with word clouds focused on assaulted, so more of the negative stuff. Poor if you're a black person. White male is more entitled to, the carrier guy, the superstar thing. That's a bias as well. So this is something we discuss as an ethical issue. Are we biased in thinking about races? Are we biased in thinking about gender, for example? So this is something we need to take care of if we build systems. So next, IE and AI and images. A very interesting thing as well. When I started to build LIQUID NEWSROOM in 2012, it's actually a platform and it's an IT company as well, so we're building AI-driven products. It was nearly the same time Storyful in Ireland started. So who knows Storyful? Anyone of you Storyful ever heard? No? Yeah? Okay, one. Cool. So Storyful was one of the first social news agencies in the world who started to check the images and the videos on YouTube, for example, if it's fake or not. So we tried to do all the stuff newsroom usually did, because with downsizing the newsroom, it became more and more difficult to do that work. And one of the, not really fascinating, it's more scary things. If you think about all the ISIS beheading pictures and images and videos, which we face on YouTube for recent years, what a nightmare it is if you are a journalist and to have to look at all those videos all the time. To give an insight here, so Storyful, for example, we let people work only 4 hours on such content, because otherwise you get mad. Yes, you seriously get injured from a personality point of view. Now, looking at those kind of examples, looking at what kind of images and videos, can we use machine learning to do the work instead of human? Yes, of course we can. So we can teach a machine to find beheading videos so that not a person has to look at it, to keep it out there, or to check if it's necessary to have it there for documentary purposes. This is one of the examples I liked. So Storyful is one of the companies actually having to deal with that kind of images. I like this as well. So we see people experimenting in looking at video material without really knowing what's in the picture, but the machine was trained to understand by the audio of the video what kind of objects might be in the image. So as you can see, the accuracy is very high. It's a diaper-based hospital room, so it's nearly accurate what the machine is predicting. Most kind of things are helpful in the newsroom as well, because we have to categorize videos. This is one of the examples I like for another purpose. It's actually one thing built from Microsoft. It was the idea to have artificial intelligence support disabled people. In this case, the guy here who's blind, who gets support by his backpack. He can buy his glasses. The glasses tells him what kind of person is sitting in front of him, tells him about the emotional situation of that person, tells him is male or female, is it what kind of age the person has. So giving all the insights that blind person actually can't see. Even here, sitting in the restaurant, the recipes are read by the machine, telling him in words what he can't see on the table. These are cool examples where AI can be very helpful in the daily context, in the living place we are in. Some more problematic issues are how do you train an image recognition if a bagel and the fox looks so similar, the dog looks so similar. It's getting difficult. So we have some real world problems out there as well. This is another example where, especially in image, getting images at higher quality, AI will be used to increase the quality of the pictures. A lot of research papers out there. In this case, it was from Disney Research, which used that kind of CNN models to increase the quality. This is something I personally found very amazing, and we worked on that as well. So this is cool stuff. Can we use text to generate images? Yeah? Just digest this slowly. Can we use text to create images? So that was amazing. You probably heard of GAN models out there, generative adversarial networks. It's pretty cool stuff. And when we did a project for Google this year, so where we started to find concepts in text, I found it quite interesting to think, if we have an idea for text, what the text is all about, can we create images out of that? Why could that be relevant? If you think about the image market as $1 billion market, that's quite interesting. Because each time you put out a blog post out there, check for prices for images, get images, it's something about 150 euros to upwards to 400, 500 euros. That's a huge amount of money. So each time you try to publish something, you have to get the license for the pictures. So what if a machine could understand the text you've written and create the image just on the fly while you're typing? That's cool stuff, isn't it? So Microsoft did something in the way that it was able to, if you typed in yellow bird sitting on the kind of branch, create it. So, and the machine created that kind of picture, which is amazing output. So video, I think some of the examples you might have seen on YouTube or heard in media. So this is one example where obviously Obama seems to say something on YouTube. And it looks quite natural, doesn't it? The point is, and the interesting thing is, it's not his word. So in this case, the researchers just put some words into his mouth, using that kind of recognition of the mouth area, putting some completely different text on his mouth. That's scary, isn't it? So not only ethical speaking, but objectivity. We are in the area of fake news, aren't we? So this is something interesting we need to take care of, because building such models is quite easy. The Stanford researchers here, the code is out there. You need just a computer to do that. It's a few bucks, and you can do just similar things. So we face the problem of how can we distinguish video material which has been faked in the future. And you know her, just watch her face for a second. I think she wouldn't like it. You don't even have to hear the audio for that. Looks strange, doesn't it? So what would happen if we merge Trump and Merkel? Yeah. So this is what we know a little bit about deepfakes. Yeah. Anyone heard about deepfakes already? Yeah. So okay, cool. So deepfakes is actually putting the face of someone else and someone acting. We heard it in the context of celebrities, yeah, and porn stars. So it's a really nasty thing. If you're not controlling your face and someone putting your face on someone who says, no, I'm not there, yeah, I think that's pretty nasty. But you can damage people. That's an ethical question as well. Interesting if you think about using GANs for modeling 3D people, so just an avatar person also. You can put yourself in a complete new context, created just by a machine. So another area would be just room. I found that example from the New York Times pretty interesting. It fits so much in what we actually experience when collaborating with people. So sometimes it's really hard to put down notes because you're in discussion. So we actually tried, and that's interesting, it's a news organization, but we have an engineering team working on cool and real products. In this case, we built a table which is able to record collaborative workspaces. So if you tap on the table, the recording starts. So each time the team was working on the table, you can see how it was created, the recording started. And you know, AI can help you to transform video, audio text, written text. So the easiest thing was to, if it's recorded, just put in the text as well. So we created transformation as well. So in the end, you get something as a text which can be read on an iPhone, on a smartphone, on a tablet afterwards, immediately as recorded session. I mean, that's helpful, isn't it? You can see the application here on the smartphone. I'm not from Switzerland, but indeed I have a company in Switzerland. The funny thing is, think about transforming Schweizerdeutsch in English or in German. That's really fun. So AI in journalism. Coming back to what we heard about Panama Papers last year. If you think about the huge amount of data the journalists had, they had about 2.6 terabyte of data, but only 22 megabyte actually we looked at. Now, having machine thinking in your mind, having the abilities, the technological abilities, now think what we could achieve if we brought AI into place, looking at those kind of data, looking at relationships of data, looking at some unusual patterns in that data, looking at sports people connected to business, what kind of relationship is it? Can we build a system which detects those kind of unusual relationships? And for investigative journalism, it would be huge opportunities. Here's an example of what we did last year for the Swiss election, Swiss voting in this case. At that point, it's not AI. This is social graph analytics, as you can see here. So what we did is we recorded conversations around the voting in Switzerland. It was just the same time as the German general election. And we checked off who's connected to whom. We did nearly the same work during the German election to understand for Sachsen, for Bundesland Sachsen, if there's some kind of campaigning taking place in politics. So can we figure out communities of people talking more closely to each other? It looks like a lot of buzz around a certain topic, but you figure out it's just campaigning, so people are just making a buzz out of nothing. The AfD problem we faced last year. So is it something which we can recognize that you're looking at the patterns? This is one of the application fields for us. Maybe see we use natural language processing, so graph analytics in a political context. Here it's natural language processing again. It's again the Swiss voting, where we try to figure out what kind of topics are discussed in public. Why does it make sense? You sometimes get the feeling if you report about something that it's only gut feeling. So people think that this might be an issue. Especially in the German context last year, for me it was interesting to see if the media is doing something which is just not what the citizens are thinking. Is media still matching the problems, addressing the problems of the people or not? So we built that kind of word clouds. Just by using word frequencies, word nearness, to figure out what kind of topics have been changing over time. So last point, the last part of the presentation, I guess you get it really heated up here, right? It's a little bit like sauna. Okay. One exciting thing I found for sport journalism is this one here from IBM. There's a lot of buzz around IBM Watson. It's sometimes, if you look closer, it's buzz. Sometimes you figure out it's something interesting. In this case, it was something interesting because it was during a tennis match where we tried to check for various interesting parameters, variables during the match to decide what kind of clip makes sense to post on the website. So we looked at the crowd cheering behind the tennis players. We looked at the excitement of the players in the game. We looked at the noise the people made just clapping their hands to decide if that might be a video component which goes viral on media. And we used our machine to detect those kind of parts of a video clip in real time. We cut it out in real time and pushed it immediately on the website, driving traffic and engagement. But it's an exciting experience of how you can use tech and AI specifically to understand what's really driving viral effects on the net. So this is some additional insights. about how you can factor ideas. So in this case, the question was, can we find out who's in the middle class? Yeah, just without asking those people, just by behavioral decisions a person makes. And this is a look into a patent from Facebook. So it's actually a drawing which is official. And you can see what they actually use to understand if someone is a part of a middle class. You can see how many internet connection devices does the user own. It's interesting. Does the user own a house or not? What city is the house in? That's micro-marketing, we know that for years now. But especially if you live in certain suburbs, you're more likely to have certain household income. That's not new knowledge. The interesting thing was I found, I think a couple of months ago, I think it was also Stanford team again, we tried to use Craigslist. You know Craigslist in the US? Yeah? So Craigslist is like Kleinanzeigen, yeah, for like the eBay format. And we said, can we decide based on what kind of cars people drive, what kind of voting we do? Is it Trump? Is it Obama? That sounds crazy, doesn't it? So we used the cars on Craigslist, did the training, of course, the testing, so attributing the cars with correct labels. It's an Audi, it's VW, what is it? And with the postleitzahlen, the postal code, and trained the machine, and actually found with high accuracy, based on the data we found on Craigslist for cars, what people voted in that area. That's crazy. I need to think about buying the next car. So we're getting to the end now. Yeah, sure. As I said, the Hemingway example before it. I had some interesting talks 3 days ago with someone from Karajan Institute, Salzburg. You might have heard that startups have started to mimic music of well-known companists as well. So it's possible to actually understand the character of music of someone who's well-known and to understand what makes that music, that person. And so the startup actually had something like a dashboard for what kind of emotion will be ordered. Yeah? Does it need to be more sad stuff? Does it need to be more joyful stuff? And what kind of music direction does it should take? And it was possible to combine both aspects into something built by artificial intelligence in the end. So who owns that kind of copyright then? Does a machine have a right of copyright? That questions came up. So, last thing, I think it's a nice example of how entertainment might be affected. In this case, it's virtual reality, because we started to use technology again to help someone in a room to interact with a puppet here, which is not real, just by using the understanding what the body is doing with that person in the video to interact with something which is just virtually only available. I think all that gives you quite a good insight what's happening in media right now. From the chill media, I know that not much investment takes place. For startups, if you think about building a business in that area, I think there's amazing things you could do, especially with deep learning, with generative adversarial networks currently coming up. So many things which can be done and can be experimented. I'm open for questions now. Yeah.
A few days ago, along the Gaza-Israeli border, there were tens of people that were killed.
Yeah.
According to the Israeli press, the majority of them were terrorists. How would a summarizing machine learning algorithm report that news? How should it be reporting it? Who is in charge of making that choice?
Yeah, I mean, if you think about the bias in reporting, yeah. So you have factual news, you know what kind of things have happened. It was a killing, you know the number of the people, and now it's part of who made the algorithm to create the output. So based on what kind of thinking goes into the algorithm, you know that's the problem. I had some nice talks with Hans Trompenas, who's actually in cultural management, cultural collaboration. And it's interesting if you work in building AI stuff for multicultural contexts, that cultures interpret things differently. So like one of the questions he had was, your friend is suspicious of having done some theft, so he's criminal, maybe. Police comes to you, would you actually tell the police about him or not? So in some cultural contexts, people would say, it's a friend, I wouldn't do that. Yeah? If they find evidence, I'm fine with that. In other cultural contexts, they say, sure, it's the truth, he's done something wrong. I have to say the police about that. The funny thing is that the different cultures think about the other culture interpreting it that way differently. So in this case, the Japanese actually thought that those who handed over the friend to the police done something wrong. We can't trust them. Yeah, it's just like he's doing such a bad thing to a friend. How would business be like? Some other context. What you can see here is we have even a cultural thinking. I think the Palestine-Israel conflict is so difficult in itself. Any time you write it without AI, it's difficult to find the right tone, to find the right reporting. Is the accusation of a terrorist correct or not? It's so difficult. So I think AI can't solve the problem. It's still what you build into it, how AI should interpret the data. So in this case, I would say we should still have to check it.
I think that people have a right to know whether an article is written by journalists or by an algorithm.
Yeah, sure. I think so. I think always we should be transparent. So one of the things we think about ethics, and I would like to invite you because, as I said, I'm responsible as a spokesperson for ethics in the society. We need the discussion about such things. So if you think you have something valuable to contribute, contact me. We try to put in the paper. We want to consult the government. Yes, I think transparency is key. We should always know if we talk to a machine, or if we read a machine, or is it human? So we had the discussions you might have heard about the Google example, Google Assistant example. No question. So if it's not, if you're not aware that this is a machine, I think that's nasty. That was an example from Google, so I don't blame them for that specific example. And we already said we would like to tell the next time. But be transparent, tell when you use machine. I think we shouldn't fool people. Yeah, thanks for listening, taking the time. I think it's hard here because of the heat. And thanks for being here.
Thank you, Steffen. I would like to announce that we are officially in lunchtime, so please go in the other side of the venue, have good time. We have prepared very delicious sandwiches for you guys. We also thought about the vegetarians here, so you're not going to be discriminated as well. Thank you. See you back in 1:30.
Guys, we would like to thank all the sponsors and participants and the speakers for attending M-AI Summit, the one and only free event in Munich regarding artificial intelligence. It will become even bigger for the next years because we believe that the science should be hip and free.